Okay, so hi, thank you for agreeing to do this interview. This interview is part of a project to highlight the experiences of girls in STEM and specifically robotics. Whether you're in like you're a seasoned professional, college student, or just starting your journey in STEM, we want to capture your voice, challenges, leadership, growth, and help make the STEM community for girls more connective, inclusive, and representative. So, just starting with a quick introduction. So, what is your name? And then you're a student, correct? So, what is your name? What's your major? And then where do you go to school?
So my name is Shailaja Nandikolmath. I go to Purdue University's Honors College. I'm a first year engineering major right now, but looking to go into the aero and astro engineering program here. And yeah, I'm other things that I'm part of here, um, the electric racing team, like the robotics team here, and the Air Force ROTC program.
That's very cool. Yeah. What kind of sparked your interest to get into either the degree that you're studying right now or just some of the stuff that you've been involved with at college?
So when I was younger, I've always wanted to do something in space. When I was younger, I wanted to become an astronaut. And then I grew up and I was like, I actually want to go into the more sciencey things about space. So I wanted to do astrophysics. And then it wasn't until I actually joined my first like robotics team where I was like, actually, I choose engineering. And then later in my first robotics journey, I was like, I want to be a better leader. And that's kind of where I got like the Air Force ROTC side of things. And then obviously like the engineering. Yeah. So that's kind of what sparked my interest.
No, that's very cool. Yeah. So have you ever felt like just even at getting into it that you had to like prove yourself more than others in, in your field or just with whatever you wanted to do?
For sure. So many times. So when I first joined the first robotics, I joined with the FTC program in seventh grade. And so when I went to high school in ninth grade, I was part of a different FTC team. I didn't like it there. And then in sophomore year, I joined another FTC team. I didn't like it there either. And then finally, like halfway through my sophomore year, I found out that someone was finding a FRC team. And it was like a first year team, and they're like, "Oh, you should join." And so I was like, "Yeah." And I think that was one of like the biggest things that I've done, like to my success. I loved it so much, but there were definitely times in my FTC years where I was on the mechanical team, and when I would be like, "Oh, can I do something mechanical related?" They'd be like, "No, do business." And a lot of the girls that were also part of these teams, they would go into the business, but I kind of stuck with mechanical, the mechanical side of things. And so I was like, maybe this FTC team wasn't for me. And so I went to a different FTC team, a different FTC team. And finally, I found my people in FRC. And I also think that if I was comfortable in those situations in in FTC and FRC, I wouldn't grow. I think it's really important as a girl to understand that comfort and growth sometimes don't coexist. And sometimes you have to be uncomfortable to grow, like academically or socially or emotionally. And I think if those years in FTC where I wasn't, broken down sometimes, I wouldn't be who I am today. And I think those years were like they were like, yes, I really want to prove myself. I want to continue trying to, be a leader. And then I joined my FRC team. It was amazing. And yeah, so I think yes, but I think they all helped me in like so many different ways.
That's a really powerful answer. I definitely think that something like a lot of people should live by is like you got to be a little bit uncomfortable if you want to grow in different situations. Because we did
Yeah.
interview um a couple of other girls. So we did like I think two with FRC teams and then another FTC all girls team and then another girl who was also on an FTC team. She said pretty much exactly what you're saying is that, I was really pushed towards more of the business side of stuff and then I stuck
Yeah.
with the mechanical and that's something that she like worked through. She was talking about it a couple weeks ago, but yeah, that's a really
Yeah.
amazing answer. So how do you handle like that, like in whatever situations or just in general, how do you handle that like dynamic and find confidence in those like uncomfortable situations?
Honestly, I think it's the uncomfortable situations that pushed me towards like proving them wrong. Um, what I would typically do if something like were to happen in my robotics team, or like really anything, I would go to my parents, and they've been like my support for so long. They would always, because they both are engineers, and especially my mom, she'll tell me stories about how she had to prove herself, and just as being like as immigrants being in, America, there's also that like way that you have to prove yourself as an immigrant. So my mom would tell me all these stories, and I kind of learned from them. I would go to them, I'd be like, "Hey, so and so said this." And they'd be like, "Okay." And they'd like talk to me. They'd be like, "How do you feel about this?" And then they'd be like, "Okay, well, we're gonna spend the next week and try to prove them wrong." And so it kind of like I kind of just dealt with situations by talking to people, people that I trusted and people who supported me, and kind of just like trying to prove those people wrong who said those things. Um, Also, it it does help, I think, to kind of ignore like what people say and more of like how you're gonna grow as a person. I think a lot of engineering obviously is talking to people, and that's like one of the hardest parts of engineering is having that social aspect of like communicating. But another aspect is just learning, and as long as you're learning, you're winning. And so yeah, sometimes it was like tuning them out, like pretending they didn't existed. But other times it was like actually solving the problem, talking to them. And sometimes there was like a balance in between both things. So yeah.
That's really awesome. I'm really glad that you had that like support system and your parents are really supportive. My parents are also really supportive for our team. Every parent just wants to help their daughter grow. So I think that's a really key part of, you know, just moving forward. So, can you share a time where you really struggled? It doesn't have to be robotics related, it just can be anything in general. Like whether it was like confidence, if maybe like a tough class that you took, or just you felt like you didn't fit in. What kind of help do you push through? I know you just talked about like you having a support system. Is it still kind of the same thing, or is there a different instance where you felt like, okay, I was able to do this because of something else?
This is a good question. Um, There have obviously been a lot of times in my robotics teams where, so I was like the mechanical lead for my junior and senior year and part of my FRC team. And there were times when sometimes it felt like a competition amongst the girls almost, because it was like, oh, I was like typically one of like the few girls that were interested in the mechanical side of things, and sometimes it felt like a competition of like, oh, who should be the leader or who should decide things amongst the team. And sometimes in those situations it's kind of hard to figure out what to do because it's not really a guy bringing you down, it's another girl just because, you know, um because of like social structures and stuff. And in times like that, honestly, it kind of just helped me to think of think of ways to just like pretend that what they were saying didn't really matter in my life. Obviously, what they said and stuff, it was kind of using that to my advantage is what I would say. Sometimes you want to take criticism, but sometimes you want to ignore it. And I think finding that balance really helped me with college as well. So now that I'm part of like the Air Force ROTC program, it's super difficult. There are definitely times where I don't fit in at all. Uh, like just with like the military style of doing things, everyone is like a super strong leader and they kind of teach you how to work well in stressful situations, which I didn't really do well when I was in high school. And sometimes it just comes to the fact that it doesn't really matter what people say or think. In the end, you are what matters. And as long as you're winning, as long as you're learning and growing. Yeah.
That's a really amazing answer. I definitely all your answers so far have been like, oh my goodness, wow. But definitely resonate that. Also, sorry, my dog just walked in, so it's probably who you
Okay,
saw
you're
in the background.
good.
So I know you mentioned earlier, like parents have been a super big part of your just support system. Have you had any other like mentors or friends or just anyone you look up to in like the STEM field that has really helped like shape who you are?
For sure. I do want to highlight someone. She was a coach for like the FRC team that I was in. Her name is Teresa Ames, and she was so, so wonderful. She was sorry.
Yeah.
So she was like my definition of like a girl's girl, I want to say. She helped me get my hands on the robot. She helped me in the leadership aspects. She helped me through everything. I think transitioning from, so when I did join FRC, I was only part of the team for maybe like, uh, I don't know, like 3 months before it was like the end of the season because I had joined so late. And after that, I was promoted to be build lead. And so she helped me through that transition phase of like being a learner to making decisions about the team. And I didn't really have that much to, you know, base my like knowledge off of that because I was only part of the team for 3 months. And it was kind of hard because people were like, "Oh, you've only been part of the like team for 3 months. What do you know?" And kind of transitioning from that to being a leader, being like, I'm the leader, like, you have to make executive decisions, but also like learning how to, step back as a leader. Again, it's like a balancing act where you step back, you trust the people that you're leading, that they know what's best sometimes. Just that, she helped me so much, and she was literally the best. Um, Other people I do want to highlight is when I first joined the FRC team, there were seniors who actually like made the team, and they're some of my best friends, they're some of my best like mentors. They have helped me so much. They actually like sat down, they taught me everything. They but they had high expectations for me. So it wasn't just like, "Oh, she's new, we'll give her space to figure it out." No, they were like, "You're going to figure this out, but then you actually have to, perform as well." And I think that really helped too, because that's how I learned like all the technical aspects of what it meant to be a mechanical lead. And they're still some of like my really good friends. And so yeah, so my parents obviously they're always number one, and then Coach Teresa and like the seniors that helped me through that.
That's really amazing. I'm really glad that you had people that helped you out. I think when I started robotics, it was this one, he is now, I think, graduated maybe a year or two ago, but he was kind of that same person for me, walked me through how to do everything and was support system. So I'm really glad that you have that community with you.
Thank
So
you.
now that you've transitioned into college and you started working in like your degree and with all these other things, have you noticed like any subtle biases or just stereotypes in your field? And then like how do you respond when you encounter them, especially now coming out of the like high school space?
Hmm. Um, wow, these are all good, really good questions. So in college, obviously, being an engineering major, there's always biases. Um, but I think more of the biases comes when, I'm with a group of people. We're doing like a group project or something, and people just assume that the guy will, take charge. And um, that's something that I've seen a little bit here at Purdue. And sometimes you just have to, sometimes it doesn't really matter, sometimes it's just like, okay, you can lead, and I'm gonna learn from your leading room, or your mentors aren't a transition that I had to learn because in high school, obviously, like my parents would be there, like my mentors would be like in the same room to help me. But now it was like, I've learned all these things from my mentors, and now I have to implement them all by myself. And yeah, so that has been kind of hard here. And honestly, I'm still figuring it out. I think leadership is a like a fluid, there's no like actual definition to what a good leader is. I think it's different for everyone. It's different for every team, and that's kind of what I learned through ROTC here. And sometimes I learn from other people's leadership styles in a way that like I know what to do sometimes, I know what not to do sometimes, and I think I'm growing as a leader too. So I think college has been kind of like when you take like your training wheels off your bike, where and you're just like, now it's time to implement whatever I've learned. And it kind of comes with like experimentation. But yeah.
Yeah, it's really awesome. We only have a couple more questions left, but if you wanted to, or if you could change one thing about how women experience STEM in college and both in like the professional world, what would that be?
I want to say that obviously, um equality is a really big thing that a lot of people will talk about in, in regards to this question. But I think what's really important as a woman is to support other women. And I have seen this in very different aspects of my life. I think sometimes girls will think that it's a competition to be like the best engineer or the best at a male dominated field. And sometimes you just have to be like, no, we're all in this together and you have to support other women. And that is so, so important. Like, if you're not supporting other women, then you cannot expect them to support you in times of need. And I'm really happy because I had a friend towards my later years in like senior year. Her name was Ola, and she was part of the mechanical team as well. And she was like my person. Like whatever would happen, she would support me, I'd support her. We were in this together, and I think that's something that I would want to change. More women supporting women. Also, just equality in general, more opportunity. I also think that opportunity is something that you have to actually strive and reach for. And it's definitely harder for women than it is for males, but that's gonna that should like fuel you to reach harder, reach like farther, and like actually take those opportunities. And once you get them, do not let them go. Don't take them lightly because sometimes you won't get another opportunity to prove yourself or to complete the task at hand. And so I think those two are like the main things that I would want to change about the experience.
That's really, really awesome. Yeah. We've heard a lot again about the like just having equality in general, but I think you zoning in really specifically is really awesome. What would you tell a younger girl who's curious about either getting involved with something STEM related or just about STEM in general, but feels unsure if she belongs like in that field or in that space?
I'm going to tell her that growth and comfort don't exist. If she doesn't belong or if she thinks she doesn't belong, then she definitely belongs. Um, if you're ever like in a situation where, you're uncomfortable or obviously there's like a time where you want to, step back. But if you're uncomfortable in a situation, then you're growing, and obviously that's a win. Um, if you're curious in STEM, then don't let other people define what an opportunity means for you. Sometimes opportunities can be as simple as joining a team and, just being a part of that team for some girls. For other girls, it might be actually being a leader in that team. Everyone, opportunity is different. And if you're curious about STEM, you're going to be uncomfortable, and that's just the truth about it, and it's the truth about any male dominated field. If you're going to be in that kind of situation, you're going to feel uncomfortable, and what's important is just to keep going. And it's harder to say than do, but it does take experimentation, and if the first time you're like, oh, I couldn't do it, I couldn't stay, that's totally okay. um there's going to be more opportunities for you to take that leap and stay and be uncomfortable and grow. And yeah, so I do. It is really hard, and I totally understand where girls like that come from. But again, if you're not uncomfortable, then you're not growing. So,
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. Last question. So, looking ahead, how do you hope that your experiences, both the challenges and the victories, will shape the kind of engineer, scientist, or whatever leader that you want to become?
okay. So for this question, um, I really want my leadership style to be fluid, and I think I've learned that from all my experiences being a leader in my robotics team versus being a leader in I used to do dance in high school, so dance, and I used to volunteer at like the Cincinnati Open, even that. Being a leader means fluidity, and it means like adapting to the kind of people you're leading, the kind of task at hand. And that's something that I think will change me as a leader. Um, uh, for the engineer part, obviously, um, FRC really helped me just like decide that I wanted to be an engineer, and like college is going to help me do that as well. Probably just putting myself into as many clubs as I can. I think experiences from those clubs and robotics and everything will help me become a better engineer. Also, communication. Communication is super difficult. And another one of my mentors would say that the hardest part of being an engineer is communication. And I totally agree. It has been so hard to communicate with people, and for me especially. Um, about, I mean, it could be about ideas, it can be about executive decisions, anything. And I think those experiences where I've had to communicate with people who didn't want me communicating with them, who they didn't think that I should be a leader, those experiences have they've helped me to become a better engineer. Just because this is what I'm going to be doing for my entire life, and I'm really excited about it. And I really, really wanted to become an engineer, but all those experiences are going to help me. Obviously, the technical side of things, and just like being in uncomfortable situations, taking like leadership positions that maybe seem too difficult, or starting going into the internship thinking that maybe this is too much. I want to do more of that, and I want to use those situations to grow in. And I'm going to fail. And that's the beauty of it, because I'm going to fail and I'm going to learn so much, and then after that entire thing happens, I'm going to be like, "What?" And that's the kind of engineer that I want to be. I want to put myself in situations where I have to think outside the box, you know, think prove myself wrong. Yeah.
And that's a really, really amazing thing. I'm so excited for you and whatever you're gonna do. Thank you again for
Thank
agreeing to do
you.
this. Really,
Of
really appreciate
course.
it.